Hey there, listeners. Just a heads up, this episode might dive into some heavy stuff like rape, sexual assault, suicide, violence, or drugs. If you or someone you know needs help, reach out to a professional or call a helpline. Remember, we're not experts, we're just here to share stories and start conversations. If you choose to skip this episode, that is totally okay. Take care of yourself and each other. Enjoy the show. Hello, Lisa. Welcome to the Mentally a Badass podcast. I'm so happy to have you today.
Thanks for having me. I love that I can be here.
Yes. I am excited for our conversation today. It's also a very serious topic and something that needs to be spoken about a lot more. I was looking up to all your work that you do with the Health Hub, and I just thought that was like very intriguing. I'm like, oh, what's this? I clicked on it, and we're gonna talk about this in the episode. But I first just want to just mention like that's really cool thing that you're doing.
I really appreciate that. It's definitely been a labor of love, and it's so funny when we do dive into that in particular. You'll see how it went from kind of this passion project, just something I wanted to do to kind of expand on my website, to overtaking my website and becoming kind of the central foundation for the whole thing. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and it makes sense call it a hub because it's literally like a one-stop shop. And I'm like, why didn't I never think
Yeah.
about that? Like, it's such a good idea. I'm like, why did I never think of that? That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so before we get into more in detail of what you do, I like to get to know my guests a little bit more as well for my audience. So let's talk about your father's suicide. He passed away when you were younger, and you just recently found out why when you were 40. Is that right?
I was 45 years old. So my father was 45 years old when he passed away. And ironically, that's when I learned the truth about his suicide. So to me, I've lost him twice in my life. I lost him the first time in the summer of 1978, right after I turned 10. I was 10 years old, and he was there when I went to sleep, and he was gone when I woke up in the morning. The narrative that I was told, the story that I was told, was that he had died of a heart attack. And, at 10 years old, there was no reason to question that. I mean, my dad was a smoker, there was heart disease in his family, so it was a reasonable explanation for everything that had happened. And that's how I lived my life. That's how I carried on for 35 years. My mother kept that secret because she just didn't want it to impact me more than just losing him initially would impact me, because you layer a suicide on top of just losing your dad. That levels it up to a place that a lot of people just can't handle. So she kept that a secret from me, and I ended up finding out kind of accidentally when I was 45.
Yeah, that makes sense why she was trying to protect you. Can you just talk just like a little bit more about your experience with that when you found out?
Yeah. So, as I said, I was 45 years old when I found out my dad had taken his life, and it was very much by accident. I was never supposed to find out. My mother really, at one point, maybe intended on telling me, but then it's like, you're getting older, you're going to high school, you're going to college, you're getting married, and it was almost like it was never really the right time to just bring it up and kind
Hmm.
of drop that bomb. So she just never told me. And ultimately, I just had a conversation with a cousin. I bumped into her randomly. I was out with my husband. We were chatting, catching up. She has two kids. We have two kids. And one thing led to another. And she just, out of the blue sky, asked me if our daughters had any of the same mental illness that my father had. And I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. I was
Hmm.
completely unaware that my father had had any mental illness, that he had been depressed, that there were any issues. And I didn't like run to my mother initially right after that conversation. It didn't really like start a chain reaction of me thinking, okay, what don't I know? It wasn't really like that. But the very next time I was with my mother, I think, which was the next day or so, we were talking and just having lunch. And it was just a random conversation, and started talking about my dad, which we did all the time. And out of nowhere, I wasn't even prepared myself for the question that I asked her, because I never intended to ask. It just came out. And I asked if my dad had been depressed, and she said yes. And I said, did dad take his life? She said he did. And it just, in that moment, it just kind of blew my life apart.
Yeah, that's definitely, especially this all these years thinking that it was a heart attack and now finding out that your father had mental illness and was depressed and not knowing at all. That can definitely hit really hard. And did you have like any moments where you felt a little angry towards your mother, or like did you ever have any of those feelings? Oh, that's good.
No, and you know what? I get that question a lot, and it's a reasonable and fair question. But the truth of it is, when I found out, I found out about 11 years ago. So I've known this truth for about 11 years. I'm in my mid 50s now. At the time, I had been married for 20 years when I did find out. I had two daughters who were kind of teens, tweens, so they were, kids. And I got it. Like, instantly, as a parent, finding that out as a mom, like I knew instantly why my mother shielded me from that.
That
I
makes
understood,
sense.
absolutely understood. And to be honest with you, I think she saved me. She absolutely saved me. I don't know. Knowing how bad it was, knowing that I had lost him and knowing he was gone, if I had ever known of the real circumstances, I don't know what that would have done to me, to be honest with you. I really don't.
Yeah, actually, listening to what you just said, that totally makes so much sense. One, if you are a mother yourself, you would have more of an understanding of why your mother made that choice, not in a way of down the road upsetting you or hurting you, but realizing you would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I was totally grateful. To this day,
Yeah,
I have been absolutely nothing but incredibly grateful to my mother for, she took, it's basically like she took that bullet for me. She shielded me from all that extra pain on top of the pain I was already feeling. I mean, there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not so grateful to her for kind of absorbing that.
yeah. I'm like I said, I'm completely changed my mind on what like based off of what you said. Like she did literally, because that could have, yeah, definitely affected you when you were younger. And then you have that grief throughout your whole life. I mean, obviously, we all have grief when when someone passes away, a family member passes away, but it would have been a different experience.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And like I think back to what life was like in the late 1970s. Like, who was talking about mental illness? Who was talking about suicide out in the open? Who were you going to cope with that kind of a loss? Like, there weren't resources. Things weren't mainstream. Things weren't out in the open. So, I mean, I know what it was like to have to grieve as a child losing a parent. Like, none of my friends had lost a parent. I was the only one. And that right there, as a 10-year-old kid, all of a sudden I was in this bucket all by myself that no one else could relate to. And thinking about what it would have been like if all of a sudden I had to deal with a suicide loss on top of that. Like, we were so ill equipped to deal with just losing my dad.
Hmm.
To have known that he had taken his own life at that point in time, I can't even imagine how we would have met.
Yeah, and I've interviewed a couple of people that they've experienced that themselves, like their father committed suicide. And one thing I just realized right now as we're talking, and other people I've spoken to, is that that had a parent commit suicide, it's always the father. So from what I've experienced, but I think it has a lot to do about men's mental health, because I think statistic wise, I mean, you can actually, I would like to hear your feedback on this because you do work as a crisis counselor. Do you think that the statistic is like men are more likely to commit suicide?
Well, I mean, that is the demographic right now. I mean,
Yes.
I can speak to the demographic that we see most often in crisis lifeline situations. I mean, I work for the Trevor Project. I'm on the Trevor Project Lifeline. So our primary demographic is LGBTQ youth ages 13 to 24 who are in crisis. But we get calls from everyone, from
Yeah.
all ages and backgrounds. But primarily it's the LGBTQ young community. But on the 988 crisis and lifeline side, so much is related to men in their 50s, 50 to 65, or in that kind of bracket. That that's kind of the primary demographic of people who are calling us or who are taking their lives.
Wow. That was like interesting and mind blowing to me, because when I think of people calling 988, I think of people around my age or like younger, like the Gen Z and such. But because I guess I think in my head that the men in their 50s in that generation still don't believe in like mental health and such, which I know I'm 100% wrong when I just said that.
No, you're not.
But
You're not at all. It's look, anyone from that generation, anyone who's Gen X like I am. I was born in 1968. Any of us, there's still that stigma. People are
Yeah.
still afraid to say that they're not okay. They're afraid to, men in particular are afraid to look weak. They're afraid to be vulnerable. They're afraid to expose themselves. So you're not wrong at all. You're actually spot on.
Yeah. I think I just say something and then I just automatically assume I'm wrong. It's something I just personally need to work on myself.
Well, you were
I guess for me, just being on the internet publicly, I never want to like say anything like any incorrect, misleading statements or anything like that. So I think I just have like a defense mechanism. I'm just like, I say something, I don't know for sure if I'm right, guys.
okay. Well, you know what? Look, all you can do is have a disclaimer and say, look, I hope I'm right. I may not be.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely put anytime I talk about suicide on this podcast, it's always like I already have a pre-recorded already ready that I insert just about suicide and such. But yeah, I think I need to just work on that myself. But so you said that they're mostly around like 50-year-olds. So I guess I know obviously it's confidentiality, but can you kind of, I guess, I'm trying to ask this question where it's not like where it's sensitive, you know? So I obviously there's going to be no names, everything's confidential, but what is a call typically like, I guess kind of like a walkthrough and how you help people who are at that like at the edge in a way.
Sure, sure. Now, keep in mind that this is whether you're talking about the Trevor Project, which is the Lifeline that I volunteer on, or you're talking about the 988 Lifeline. We get a lot of overflow from 988 as well, so there all the calls are kind of mixed in. I mean, people know it and understand it to be a suicide and crisis lifeline, but people tend to like focus on the fact that it's a suicide lifeline. So there's this expectation, I think, that people who are calling are people who are, like just about to take their life, or they're at that imminent risk of suicide place in their brain. And that's not always the case. People call lifelines, and people should call lifelines for all the reasons. Anything that represents a mental health crisis to you, like maybe it's a really bad breakup, maybe you lost your job, maybe it's a housing or a food insecurity, maybe there's an abuse issue, or maybe you're struggling with coming out and you're worried your family's going to disown you, or maybe you're in emotional crisis and you're considering taking your life, you're having suicidal ideation. So it's like kind of the gamut. It runs the gamut for sure. But I mean, in terms of someone calling, like let's just for argument's sake say that I get a call, which I do quite often, with someone who is at imminent risk of suicide. And what that means, the way that we classify it, what that means is the person who's calling on the other end of the phone is someone who has got a plan in place. They have a timeline that is within 24 hours of that phone call, and they know exactly how they're going to take their life. So if those boxes are checked, that's considered an imminent risk suicide call. So that means that there is no time limit on the number of minutes or hours that we can be on that call. We are on that call from the minute we pick up the phone until that person is de-escalated. They have a safety plan. They know that they're going to get a call back until they have, kind of their bearings again. So that's kind of what the overarching, kind of the high level view of the call looks like. When we start a call, when we pick up that phone, within the first several minutes, the first thing I'm going to ask is, are you thinking of taking your life? Have you had any suicidal thoughts today? Have you done anything to try and end your life? And that's a hard question when there are people who are calling and trying to get help. It can be a triggering kind of question. We try to be very sensitive in the way that we ask it. We try to be sensitive if someone doesn't want to answer it. But that's called our risk assessment phase, where we're really trying to understand, like, what are we dealing with here? How imminent is this? Does this person have a plan? And then depending on the answers to the question is kind of like a decision tree that you kind of play out in your head. So if the person says, no, I have not thought about suicide today, or I don't have a plan, then okay, now they're over on this side of the decision tree, and we take the questioning appropriately on that, in that direction. If someone says, yes, like I am having suicidal ideations, I have tried to harm myself today, I do have a plan, then we go down a completely different path of questioning. And we're asking people, what is your plan? Do you know the means that you would take your life? Do you have access to those means? Where are they? Then we start trying to build a rapport, where we're trying to get as much information about them, where they are, where are you located, what kind of support system do you have, is anyone with you? Then you just kind of are going up and down the spectrum of questions, just trying to gather as much information and make that person feel as comfortable and seen and heard. And then you're just asking, like, what's up? What brought you to this point? What have you done in the past to get yourself to maybe regulate yourself? And then we go from there, and we try to give resources if necessary. We hold a lot of space. We hold a lot of space and do a lot of listening and validating on Lifelines. And then we offer resources, and in some cases we do either involuntary interventions. Maybe someone is in the process of harming themselves and we can't get them to de-escalate, so we have to call the local authorities and get them involved to make sure that that person is safe. But that doesn't happen very often. It's very rare. Usually we can help someone call for help on their own behalf, or sometimes we'll offer, if they can't do it themselves, we'll say, do you want us to do it? And then we go ahead and kind of bridge that connection between the person and the authorities. So there are lots of different ways that we jump in and that we help, but more than anything, the thing we do most often, like I said, is just hold space for people. And it's interesting, there's a statistic, at least there is on the Trevor Project Lifeline and in our community, for every LGBTQ youth who is considering suicide, just having one human being on the other end of the phone can reduce the risk of that youth's decision to take their life by 40%. By having one human being there to just listen and validate them, it can reduce that suicide risk by 40%. So it's it's a powerful thing to be able to listen to someone and to validate who they are and to be able to offer some kind of direction or hope.
Yeah, and that percentage of 40%, like that's definitely a huge game changer for, saving so many lives. Because it's just statistically, it's just sad, like how many lives we lose every single day, like per the minute, per like the hour. And I do know, of course, about the 988 and the crisis line, but to be honest with you, I never even knew that the Trevor Project had a crisis line.
That
Is
we've
that
been around for 26 years, almost 27 years. I think we've taken, we take over 500,000 calls a year at least, and who knows at this point how many hundreds of thousands of lives have been saved because of these lifelines. But Trevor started over 2.5 decades ago, and we've got a beautiful community of supervisors and counselors like myself. We also have a texting line. Some people just don't feel comfortable talking to another person over the phone in that traditional way, so we also offer a texting option. People can just dial 678 start, and you go right into a texting platform, and you can have a conversation that has a little bit of a buffer, because a lot of people need that.
Yeah, actually, I don't know why I use that word. I know. One night I did text it and no one answered.
No one, say that again?
I don't know what it was. It was like 2 a.m. I texted and no one answered me.
Who did you text? Do you remember? Like,
It was the one it was definitely the texting version of the 988, and I mean I got a response back, like an auto response saying that there was like a high volume, which makes sense at 2 a.m, I guess.
yeah,
But
a high call.
yeah, but no one like ever, like I woke up the next morning, it was still, but I was fine. I didn't always say I'm here, but
That's definitely unusual. I mean, there are times when people may have to wait a tiny bit. We're usually there. I don't. It's hard as a counselor. I'm only exposed to one side of it.
mhm.
While I know what people have to do while they're waiting in the queue, I understand what the experience is. That's not an experience that I have often or have ever really had, being on the opposite end of the phone. So I do know that, like I said, we do a lot of overflow for the 988 Crisis Lifeline. And there have been times, like, for instance, there was a situation we had where, when the election results were available,
Yes, I can see that.
the Trevor Project's Lifeline volume went up 700% the day
I heard.
after the election. So it's obvious that that's a reason why people wouldn't necessarily be able to get right through in the way that they normally would. But that's rare. So I'm sorry that happened to you.
That's all right. Honestly, who knows? It happened so long ago, a couple of years ago. Maybe I could be missing some details. Maybe I did text and be like, I'm good. I could have very well happened.
Yeah.
I was also like, I was like, I was also like I was also kind of like drunk that night. I had basically had an episode and they mixed that with alcohol. That's not good. And then I did it because I had like thoughts of like looking at like my meds and like, my brain was being like, take those pills, or like the voices were really loud. And I've never called or text before, but I've had like episodes and moments where I was in the car thinking like, what if I just crash this car? What can like, you know what? Like I've had a lot of those. And usually when I get to that like level in darkness, that's when I know, okay, I need to go on my meds. Right now I'm on my meds. I'm good. I don't have moments where I'm gonna go want to jump out my balcony. But yeah, I mean, I was on meds at that time, but I guess I think the alcohol just obviously amplified everything, because I actually like was really pissed at like my ex, and I had like a whole thing like screaming at him. It was like a whole, yeah, it was not my finest hour. But that was like the only time where I texted because I didn't feel comfortable with the calling, which is really interesting because I'm like really open about my mental health. I'm a huge mental health advocate, obviously considering this podcast, but for some reason I just didn't feel comfortable calling.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't. A lot of people just need a little bit of a buffer in between, and that's why, the texting platform can be so valuable for some people. Yeah, I mean, even sometimes just the act, I mean, I know you didn't get through in the way that you hoped, but sometimes even just the act of the text can disrupt the thought process and disrupt the actions. So you just
That's true.
never know. And like you said, had a lot of alcohol mixed with meds and may not necessarily remember exactly step by step kind of how it went down. Yeah, even sometimes something as simple as texting a friend can be a disruption that just kind of snaps you into a different place.
That's probably what it was. I think like the text and where it came from, going from darkness to, oh wait, I need to obviously have my brain towards the texting, and then I was like, okay, I guess I'm out of that. It was definitely very hard because I knew that I'm a lot more self-aware considering all of my education and learning of like psychology and mental health and just healing and such. When that happened, I knew I was going into an episode of it, and it was kind of a moment where I had like angel devil on like my shoulders, and the noises were getting loud. But then the angel was like, Justine, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. And then what just came into my head, I had to keep thinking and keep being repetitive in my brain, is like, let's think about reality right now. You have a family that loves you. You have friends. You're doing like, that's what I had to keep doing, is to take myself from, you should overdose, like that's what you should be doing right now. So I'm like, stop, like let's go this way. It was kind of like pulling me here, and I like pull myself back, and it was just a lot of like, it was kind of like, like tug of war.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know what you're saying, like kind of the angel devil
That's what
image.
it was, literally.
Yeah, it sounds like that's exactly what was happening, and I'm glad the good side won.
Yes, it was definitely hard, but luckily, yeah, it was just those moments where I'm just like, what would happen if I do this?
Yeah. Well, look, I think a lot of people, you don't necessarily have to have suicidal ideation or tendencies or deep-seated mental illness to sometimes have those fleeting thoughts. I think we're all human beings, and
Yeah.
sometimes we get stressed, and sometimes we get overwhelmed, and sometimes we're like, God, it would just be easier if everything just stopped. I mean, it doesn't
Yes.
necessarily mean you want to jump out a window, but it is reasonable. We are human beings, and sometimes our heads just go there, even if the intention isn't there.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I don't have those moments, at least currently I'm stable, but anything now to this day, I don't have much of thinking of, oh, I want to die because I'm worthless and not supposed to be here. It'll be more towards like, I have chronic illness. So it's more of just like, I'm so tired of just waking up in pain and struggling with I have like on my right, I have glaucoma. So just dealing with that pain. And I just have a lot going on physically. So it's like, I feel like there's like a whole group of us doesn't want to, like, we don't want to die. We just want it to stop. And that's like the biggest thing. And I feel like, I mean, it's honestly, you can always do so much with the chronic illness, but it's hard.
Yeah, I
It's,
get it. I get it. And
yeah.
it's hard because that's when you think about it, when you kind of drill all the way down to the center of why people actually do take their life or do attempt to take their life. like you said, they're not doing it because they want to leave their family or their community or their job or their friends. They're doing it because they're just in so much insufferable pain that they just want it to stop. And it's the only thing they maybe have control over. When you're in that place and you're debilitated by your mental illness, it's all consuming, it's overpowering, and you've lost control in a lot of ways. You've lost control of most things in your life that way at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a lot of people who make that decision, it's like the only chance they have to take control back by making that one kind of final decision. So
Mm-hmm.
the goal of having these kinds of conversations is to remind people, like anyone who's listening to this conversation, anyone who's watching our conversation, like the way that you feel right now, if you're hurting right now, if you're struggling, if you're hopeless, the way you feel is not going to be the way you'll always feel. There will be another side of it. There are people out there to help. And if you're someone who's sitting out there and you're listening, you're hearing us and you're like, well, that's great if you're talking about people who have a family or have a community or who have a network. But the truth of the matter is, even people who maybe are living alone and who don't have a community or people to go to, you have got someone on any crisis text line, on any hotline. You have counselors like me, people like me who are out there, who are willing to listen, who are willing to hold space and willing to help. So there's always another way.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's also really important is knowing what I know is like my, I guess I don't know if the right word is like my limits, are just knowing to, sorry, I'm not even wording this correctly. I think I'm just going to tell you what I do when it comes to, because I know myself. It's just knowing yourself and knowing like what your triggers are and when to go see a psychiatrist or therapist when you know you're getting to that, darkness. And for me, I have certain rules. I guess rules is probably the best way of saying it. Is one, I never have a gun in the house.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. I actually have my boyfriend sell his. Yeah. So that's one thing. My boyfriend used to have a gun and I had him sell it. And the next thing is one is the gun. And then what is this? I had another one I'm trying to think of. Oh my gosh. It literally came out of my mind. But I guess what I'm going to ask you is, besides like obviously not having the gun in the house, what other rules do you think would be good to set to help people have like less likely to commit like suicide?
Well, I think like you said, a lot of it is kind of a self-awareness. Like, okay, these are my weaknesses, these are my triggers. Try and do the best you can to create an environment that minimizes those triggers. I mean, like you said, like removing things like pills, making sure there's no weapon in the home, making sure that if you have ever had suicidal ideation and have ever come up with a plan, whatever it is that you would have done, you don't have any of those things
Mm-hmm.
available to you. And a lot of it too is just having like an active safety plan. A lot of it is when you're in a moment or a period of being lucid and being balanced and calm, like go to people that you trust, people that you care about, and talk to them about how you're feeling and see if they'll be willing to be there for you if you're in crisis and you need someone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like really take inventory. Like, okay, if I'm in a bad headspace, what do I do? What are the what are the few things that I can do? I can go out for a walk. I don't get behind the wheel of a car. I don't pour myself a drink. I don't take an edible. I don't do anything that's going to impair me and and my faculties. Maybe you say, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit and I'm going to try and meditate and re-regulate myself. So you do things like that, and you kind of have these plans ahead of time so that you don't have to stop and think about what you're going to do if you're in crisis. You just know what you're going to do if you're in crisis. And maybe you write it down. Maybe you put it in your phone. You create a note in your phone, or you write a note at home and you tape it on the wall, or you keep it on the bulletin board. You make sure that you've got options, and you also make sure that you keep in mind that if at the end of the day you're in such crisis that none of those things, you've cycled through all of those things, none of those things are working, then okay, what's my next move? I'm calling 988. Or what's my next move? I'm going to take myself to a hospital. I'm going to call an Uber, or I'm going to get in a cab and I'm going to get myself to a hospital. I'm going to check myself into a facility. So, there are like different tiers of things depending on what your issues are, depending on, what you have available in terms of resources and support. You just, you kind of tick through the list, and you do everything that you can do that will be helpful in that moment. And only you know what will be.
Yeah, and actually got me thinking of it being like a first, like kind of like a first aid kit, but also like in Florida with like hurricane prep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's when you were saying that I was like, it kind of like we should talk more about that. People should do that.
Mm-hmm. That's
I feel like that
exactly.
should be spoken about just as much as like, okay, guys, we know it's hurricane season. We all just make sure you get your water, you get your, you have your plan. Like, you know how they have like evacuation exits and such. Like, I think there should be more conversation around mental health crisis.
I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. And, knowing that you have that plan, there's a lot of security too, and just knowing that you have that plan. Forget
Yes.
about needing to access it in the moment when you're kind of desperate or hopeless. But I think it would probably give people a lot of peace of mind to know that, okay, like if I have something trigger me and I'm in a place emotionally, like I don't have to think about what to do. Like I've already thought about what to do. I already know that I have access to these kinds of supports, and I'm just going to execute on them.
Yeah. And my other rule came back to me.
Yeah,
No tequila in the household.
I think that's a very important rule for everyone.
Yes, because for some reason tequila, just
Yeah,
all the trauma comes out after I drink
yeah, yeah,
tequila.
yeah. I'm very lucky that I don't have a taste for tequila, but I think it just goes to, it just speaks to not having any substances like that. Like if you know that you go to a place that is not a good place when you drink, or if you smoke, or if you're taking whatever kinds of medication you may have access to, like don't even have the temptation there. Like don't even have the potential there. Just make sure it's not a part of the equation to begin with.
Yeah. Like, and just also just knowing that, like, I would never have, cause I know a lot of people, they'll have like alcohol, like an alcohol cabinet, and they just make their like fun drinks at home.
Mm-hmm.
Like a rule is for me is that I'm never just going to do that. If anything, I would just have like one bottle of wine and that's it. Like, I don't even buy wine in bulk or anything like that because I know I'll probably go through it like one a day. And that actually did happen to me when I had like a bunch of like a bulk of wine, and I realized a couple months after I was like, wait, why am I drinking wine like every single day? And it was not for the point of just, oh yeah, let me drink to die or something like that, but it was just more of a coping, mechanism. Maybe it was also during the pandemic and I was working a job that was killing my soul every single day, and me not even realizing it, I was like, okay, gonna have my glass of wine. And then I know, which is something I actually have to work on, is that I have to try my best to limit just one glass because I would accidentally have I used to almost drink a whole bottle in one night and not even realize it. So now I'm kind of then I was doing half. Now I'm at three-fourths. So I am doing like the one. I'm doing a little bit better.
Yeah, and you know what? Look, we're a work in progress, right? Like you recognize that it's ultimately when it's in to excess, it's not good for you. So you're doing what you need to do to make sure that you limit that, and that's huge. That's important. But look, you were not alone during the pandemic. Like everybody was adopting puppies, making gardens, baking bread, and drinking wine. I mean, that's like literally the entire pandemic. The whole world was doing all of those things. So you were definitely not in the minority. You were in the majority during that.
Yeah.
Good for you. Props to you for recognizing it and knowing that, okay, that's a damaging road to go down. Limit yourself.
Yeah, and another thing too is just to like for me to recognize, because I think I just look at other people who go out and have fun and on the weekends, and they just literally just, I mean, honestly I don't believe that people just drink to have fun. I do believe there's something more to it. But I used to be going out to like parties and be just fine. But now I'm at the point where I don't even just like, okay, have fun and go to bed and call it a day. It can, depending, of course, what mood I'm in and such, it can go like a whole other way. So now I guess in a way I kind of like, my youth is gone. Like, why? Like, I kind of get jealous that people can just drink, have fun, and call it a day. And for me, it's like a whole other level.
Well, everybody has a different capacity.
Yeah.
Like we are all not wired the same way. What you may be able to do really easily with something else in your life, somebody else may struggle with. So it's all relative. Like that's happens to be like your vice. That's your, a little bit of your weakness. And you identify that, you see that, you know that about yourself. There are people out there who do that with food. They overeat, they can't stop. It's at one, little handful of chips is a whole bag. Or the people who can't just have one soda a day, they're having 12, or, you know what I mean? So you're definitely not alone in that. And I think the biggest part of the problem is just identifying, owning kind of that behavior, saying, okay, I see this about myself. I recognize this. And I see that I have trouble with this. It's like the person who can't like have the one little piece of candy, they've got to eat the whole box. Recognizing that and limit setting to the point where then it becomes an automatic behavior. Like it's not easy in the beginning. Like trying to give something up, if you're trying to do something less, it's not easy in the beginning, but it becomes easier the more committed you become to it. You take it day by day, you take it moment by moment, and you realize that in every moment there's a choice. We make a choice consciously about everything that we do. So, good for you for making that choice and saying this isn't good for me.
Yeah, and it's also just like staying strong to not feel like influenced or peer pressure, because I come from a family where people drink a lot, and actually there's alcoholism in my family as well. And so when there's bachelorettes that I had to go to, like my cousins and such, it was a lot of obviously pressure to drink. And part of me, like I was pretty quiet about alcohol then, and like me knowing what it does to me. And I guess I just kind of just didn't want to, I guess in my head, I know everyone's here to have fun. I want to be like, guys, if I drink this, I probably would cry the whole day. So it's just trying to be like strong, because I guess I just don't really feel comfortable just like, hey girls, can I not take shots? Like I'll have a drink here. Like I'm fine with that. And some wine, I feel great. But I just think a rule too. I cannot do shots. I'm done with shots. Cause like I have 2 shots and I'm like gone. And I don't find them fun. I mean, I guess when I was younger in college is a whole different story. But now I'm just like, what's the point? I feel like if I have shots,
when we're young, we're kind of dumb. I mean, let's be honest. We're kind
true.
of dumb.
And you also just want to fit in with everybody too.
Well, that's the thing. And we realize, and it takes time, and it takes living life a little bit, and it takes age and wisdom and experience to realize, like, I don't need to do what everybody else is doing to be happy, to be satisfied, to be accepted. Like if somebody else wants to be, throwing up in the toilet, let them do it. If that's, obviously you don't want to see anybody miserable, but at the end of the day, it's like, if you know that you don't want to be the one with your head in the toilet throwing up, then it becomes, again, making a choice and saying, okay, I know what's going to happen. What do I choose? And, you don't have to answer to anybody. And that's the thing that we always tend to forget, because we get in these social situations and we're like, it's right there. It's so easy. Everyone's doing it. It's acceptable to do it. And it becomes more of an issue of, what do I want to do? And why does it matter if that makes somebody else uncomfortable? Whether you do or don't do something, it's making somebody else uncomfortable. That's on them. That's not on you. If you know, like, I don't want to drink, I'm just not going to drink, and I feel fine about my decision, don't worry about what they think about your decision, because it's not their decision. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I actually don't even like care to drink to get drunk. I would just have one and I'm fine, because it's more of just anxiety. Like it just takes off the ease of anxiety and I just feel good and I'm like, okay, I'm done. So when I have one drink, I take forever.
Yeah.
Like if I'm out having dinner or something.
You drink, you'll have a much lower bar bill. It's great.
Yes. Yeah. Yesterday I went to a concert actually, and there was like a bar there and it was $25 for one drink. I'm like, it's crazy, but also I guess it's less likely to drink again. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I just had one, just like usually at those concerts I get anxiety because it's like general admission and just a lot of people, and I just, yeah. So that's like that, and also I'm just like, hey, I'm here to have fun. But I just had one and that's it. And it took me the whole concert to finish it.
Good for you.
Literally the whole concert. Okay, I want to ask, so in this line of work that you do, how do you take care of your mental health? Because I've actually had thoughts where I would love to do it to help people, but I don't think I can do it. I feel like I don't know. I feel like I'll be crying. It'll be hard on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And I'll tell you that in my case, the interesting thing is, so I'm an empath, and I've always been an empath. I'm a highly sensitive person. I feel everybody's stuff. all the time. No matter what it is, I feel it. And I remember making the decision to become a part of the Trevor Project community. And I'm also a certified 988 counselor. I work with Samaritans as a suicide, loss, survivor, grief group facilitator. I manage these groups where survivors of suicide loss come together to share. So I'm always in these spaces that are very, very highly emotional. And they're really triggering because we're talking about suicide all the time. And I remember my family telling me they were concerned. My husband, my daughters, my mom, wondering, are you okay with, like, will you be okay with this? And I said, first of all, I don't know. Well, as I was training, I really don't know. I mean, it doesn't take much to make me cry. But the funny thing that I've learned, and I guess this is just what happens as a human when we find the thing that we believe we're supposed to be doing in the world, something clicks. There's something, or at least in my case, something happened when I get on the Lifeline. It's not to say that I'm not affected emotionally, that sometimes it's not draining, or sometimes it's not heavy, or it's not hard. But for some reason, I can be in those spaces and have those conversations and talk about those topics. And I'm okay. And you know, when I'm on podcasts like this and I'm talking, very rarely, if ever, do I get emotional. And I think it's just because it hits different for me in a way that I didn't expect. Like I questioned whether I'd be able to do it too. And it was only when I said, okay, look, I'm going to try. And what's the worst that can happen? I realize that it's too emotionally draining. I'm too deep into it, too affected by it. And then I'll find another way to be part of it. So I kind of went into it all with that in mind, thinking like, okay, if this is too hard for me emotionally, I will find another way to make an impact and be of service that way. And so that's been my own experience. You know, I've just been able to kind of internalize it in a unique way, and kind of, I don't want to say compartmentalize it because I definitely feel it, but just manage it. So, you know, if it's something that you believe in your heart you want to do, and it's a space you want to be in, like, explore it. Explore it. There are a lot of different ways to do it. Like maybe for you, it would be easier and more appropriate to be part of the text line, like be on a text line at Trevor or a text line at the crisis text line. And that way you're not having those face-to-face conversations. There is that kind of, you know, that protective space in between where you can take a second and collect yourself. You're not talking to someone in person. So if you get emotional, it's not visible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying
Does
because
that answer your question?
yes. And it totally makes sense. I actually had a friend that worked the 988, and she's very similar to me when it comes to mental health. And I did ask her, and she says it's actually very rewarding for me, which, of course, I think the reason I have these dots is because I used to work in a call center for Disney. And even though people are obviously calling to book rooms or tickets or such, sometimes I'll get people. I actually had like a person who had cancer, and we're on the phone for 3 hours
Yeah.
talking to me about how she's currently like in the hospital bed right now, and she just wanted someone to talk to. People would sometimes be on the phone and, you know, talk about like deep stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't happen like too often, but I would have those calls. So I think with me, I'm an empath as well. And so me just like hearing it and having kind of the energy pretty much go through the call, it could be like a little hard, you know? So I think that's why I thought, I don't know, like if I get anxious, not anxious, if I get sad hearing that, how would I do when every call is pretty much like that? And like I said, I would never forget that one person I talked to for literally 3 hours. And we're working from home too at the time. And it was 3 hours. I was like, man, I have to use the bathroom so bad. It was
Yeah, that
very,
can be
yeah,
tricky. That can be really tricky. I mean, I've been on 3 or 4 hour phone calls, and when you're on as a crisis counselor, when you pick up the phone, no matter how long that phone call is, you are in it until the
yeah.
end of that phone call, until that person is, you know, is safe and is de-escalated. And sometimes it can be hours and hours. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and the same. It's the same at Disney as well. We can't say, "Hey, bye, I gotta go."
Right.
Um,
Right.
the only time that they, unless like someone tells us to, like I actually did have to for that lady because we're half an hour past like our closing our lines,
Mm-hmm.
and they can like hop in a call and get see what's happening, and they hear I'm just not talking anything about Disney or anything. So they messaged me. They're like, "Hey, so see you've been on this call for a while. Just nicely say, And I felt bad, but obviously you have to. I would have been. It was already like 11 p.m. I think at that time. I hope she's okay. I wonder how she's. I don't know. I kind of think about her. I think about her a lot. I'm like, oh, I wonder how she's doing. But it was definitely hard. It was definitely hard. So that's why I asked. So I want to go. Now I want to go into the health hub.
Yeah.
I want to talk more detail. So
Yeah.
you work the crisis line, you give back in that way to the mental health community. So what made you start the health hub?
So the Help Hub is a platform that completely overtook my website. Really, it became my website. It was in the beginning it was really just a resource page. It wasn't called anything except resource page. It was kind of on the back end of my website. As I got more and more involved in the mental health space and started crisis counseling and started speaking and started writing, all of my content was now focusing on mental health and wellness. I wanted to add some resources to my own website. As a crisis counselor, that's one of the things that we do an awful lot. We hand out resources. So, like so many other mental health sites out there and platforms, they have resource pages. And a lot of the same resources were being circulated. A lot of the big resources were being circulated. And I don't want to say they were generic, but they were kind of the bigger generic helplines and crisis lines. And what I realized, the more and more I talked to people, I realized that while we all deal with the same issues, like people might be dealing with abuse, or people might be dealing with, coming out, or suicidal ideation, or homicidal ideation, or any of these grief, loss, all these issues, it's the way we deal with them is very, very different depending on what community we're in, because everybody has unique needs, and everybody has, if someone in the queer community is dealing with an issue, it may look very different than someone dealing with the same thing in the BIPOC community, or in the Latinx community, or the AAPI community. So I started separating out all of the resources that I was gathering. Then I was on a kind of a mission to gather as many resources as I could. And then finally, I realized that it would be a better experience for someone using the resources to come in and say, okay, well, I'm part of this community here. I need something that serves my unique community. So I started bundling things up in different categories, like a category for just mindfulness, or a category for just veterans, or just the elderly, or just the queer community, and so on and so forth. And there ended up being like 16 different categories. And I was building up all of these categories. And then ultimately I kind of just realized, like, this is really what we need out there. We need a place. When you're in crisis, you can't worry about, where do I call? Where do I go? Like, you need a resource. You need it right then and there. You need to know exactly what you're getting. You need to know that it's been vetted, and it's something you can trust, and you have to get there quickly. So basically like a click away. So I really just transformed my whole website and made this grid, this help hub, this directory, the landing page, and built everything around it. I have a YouTube channel called the Help Hub on YouTube. I have an Instagram channel for the Help Hub as well that circulates all the same kinds of content, and everything funnels into the Help Hub now. So if someone wants resources, they can go there. If someone wants videos about grief attacks, or videos about why we shouldn't be saying committed suicide, or videos relating to mental health, they can go to my YouTube channel through the Help Hub. If they want articles, if they want testimonials, if they want books or resources or podcasts, they can go there. So it really kind of overtook everything. And now it's become one of the most inclusive and diverse resource pages for mental health on the web.
Yeah, and I like how it's a little bit for everybody. Delivering content in different forms.
Yes, exactly.
Which is really, really smart. I have a question. So I don't know if you ever heard of there's like this company that they do digital billboards, but it's like really cheap. Like literally it could be like a couple of cents per 3 seconds. Cause I was thinking like it'd be cool if you had that digital like health hub. And you can put it, remind me after, I can give you the website, because I plan on doing it for this podcast. And it's just like the point is awareness.
Yes.
Because until I met you today, I never heard of Help Hub.
Yeah.
And of course,
It's
the
fairly new.
goal.
In your defense, it's fairly new. I launched it in November.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, okay, cool. So yeah, so you definitely like in the awareness
Hmm.
mark here, and I think that that digital billboard would be a great idea because when you're on that website, it's like you can literally put your ad in like England if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
It's so cool. So yeah, I plan on using it soon for Mentally a Badass because I feel like the name of the podcast is just so bold and that people are gonna be like, oh, what is this? And
Yeah.
so I think you should do something like that. I mean, they already, of course, have like the helpline number. I see it in different places, but I think the help hub for people who are not like in the immediate, danger of themselves, it's good to just have resources because I've had sometimes I'll have people reach out to me asking for resources. And one person who actually has schizophrenia asked me, but to be honest with you, that topic, I know like not that much that I'm comfortable even talking about it. But I have a therapist friend, so I just reached out to her real quick and she just gave me some resources to hand them. But I think this would be really cool.
No, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
To look into that. It's all about raising awareness. So I for sure will always explore every opportunity.
Yeah. And it's easy to remember too, Help Hub.
Yep. The Help Hub.
Yes, exactly. So I see that, as you mentioned before, you're an author and you have a couple of books. So can we talk about that a little bit? Like, what made you want to be an author? And like, what are your books about?
So I've wanted to be a writer since I was about 5 years old. I've been writing my whole life in so many different pockets of writing. I was a newspaper reporter. I've written for magazines. As you said, I've written a bunch of books. I ended up in the parenting space when I had my kids. That was kind of what my focus was work-life balance, raising a family. So that was really where I spent most of my time writing about family life and um, you know navigating that whole world of parenthood. So the first three books that I wrote were parenting related books. And now that I've completely shifted into the mental health space and all of my content is really focused around suicide awareness and prevention, I just actually submitted my manuscript for my fourth book. My publisher and I have been working together for many, many years. We are working on, it's part memoir, it's part Help Hub because I'm going to be distilling down everything that are the contents of the Help Hub and putting in the book. I have a toolkit section on that Help Hub. If someone's having a grief attack or doesn't know how to talk to someone about their suicidal ideation, I have tools that you can access for that language and that help and support. So we're distilling all of that down and putting it in this new book that will be coming out probably late winter, early spring.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be a very, very not only a very different style book because it'll have kind of three parts. It'll be that memoir and the directory that's online, and then the tools. But it will also, um, you know, it's definitely a project that has been a labor of love for sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for you. I think that you're doing so many different things of giving back to the mental health community. And I just want to say thank you so much for being such a great human being.
You're so welcome. I appreciate that so much. I really do. It means a lot.
You're welcome, of course. So I'm gonna have all of your information in description, the Help Hub, the link to that, your books as well. And just want to say again, thank you so much for being on here. I really do appreciate you.
It was my absolute pleasure.